My name is Dick Rabil, and I've been a resident of Montgomery Village for 42 years. I currently live in North Village, right off of Pleasant Ridge and Highland Hall Drive. I've lived in three parts of the village, and I'll quickly just say I've lived in the apartments, I've lived in the Stedwick townhomes, and I'm currently living in the North Village area for the past 26 years. I'm interested in serving on the Montgomery Village Board at this time as a way to help our community move forward in the future. Now, some people have always asked me if I would like to do something like this. And in the past, I hadn't been that open to it. But the last few years, I've entered into an area of trying to help lead conversations. And that's really my goal in serving the community, is to help lead a conversation, listen to the people who need to be listened to, present ideas, and hopefully give the community a proper voice and direction as we go forward in the future. Well, since I've been here a resident quite a long time, my initial activities involved working with my family and children in the areas of either sports or recreation or swimming and those kinds of activities and roles. But in the past few years, I took on the role as a vice president of the North Village Board of Directors. And in that capacity, I've been directly involved in helping set new policy and helping run the efficiency of the HOA in the North Village. Most recently, I've been involved in two specific areas of leadership. The first is a business area, and that is I became president of my Business Networking International chapter. Now, Business Networking International, also known as BNI, is the largest networking organization in the world. And I was president of the largest chapter in the region. And that gave me a great deal of experience and insight into working with a broad range of people from a diverse set of backgrounds and economic settings. I think that helps me as I prepare to go on the board, because in Montgomery Village, we have an extremely diverse set of people, along with their economic backgrounds and influences and skill sets. The second thing is being a part of the North Village Board that I mentioned just earlier. And that has given me a great deal of insight into the operations of an HOA and into the operations of the village specifically, and the needs of the community quite specifically. I love talking about the priority items that the board should be addressing. And having worked in North Village, I know that the hottest topic was on the parking issue. It's still a very hot topic, and it's one that we're addressing right now. And it's an issue that's very much important to all the people in the village. Now, as a Montgomery Village board member, I won't have direct access into influencing parking policy. However, when I look at the master plan for Montgomery Village, the one that was adopted in 2016, something that we have to take into consideration is the overall well-being of everyone in the village. So as part of my role on the village board, I would want to make sure that we are taking into consideration what the needs are of everyone across all the communities. And that is a very large task to take on. And yet we are, I believe, at a crossroads in our community. That is not to be negative, but rather the last 2 years has taught us something, and that is everything is changing. And what is changing most specifically is people's lifestyles. We are seeing work from home as incorporated into the lifestyles of people. What does that mean? How does that impact everything that we talk about in our community, from not only the places that we visit, the businesses that we have, but also the resources that we're going to be using? So we are at a very important time, and I'm optimistic about that time. I think we have a lot of opportunity, but at the same time, we have to be aware of the fact that things are changing and people have changing needs. And so this is how I look at it. I look at something like this topic, not only the work from home, but also something in the marketing area that's going on right now, which is called the Great Resignation. People are leaving their jobs. And so now I think they're also going to be looking at their homes, their lifestyles, the places they live in a completely different way. And I just hope to be a part of the conversation, leading that conversation to helping us understand what it is Montgomery Village is supposed to be doing in the future. 10 years ago, we did 2030, the Vision 2030 plan. It's now 10 years in. And again, I think we have to look back and say, well, some of that plan worked out pretty well, but what of it that we need to look at again? Because the last 2 years have taught us once more that things are changing and the demographics are changing, attitudes are changing, mindsets are changing, and we have a whole diverse community. So I think it's important going forward, particularly as we look down the road 10 years, what is it we need to be doing in the future? The first thing that I'd like to do is to, first of all, listen and establish a listening task force to say, what are the things, what are the hot topics? What are the tasks? What are the interests? What are the concerns? What are the pain points that everyone in the village has? Now, I know that's a big job to set up a task force, but I think that it's important that we start somewhere and say, what are these things that are going on right now? For instance, we've got the little issue with the apartment complex. That's very much present on people's minds. We have the ongoing development. That's very much on people's minds. And we've got a lot of other things that I think probably haven't even been addressed yet. And then we've also got what's going to happen with parks and recreation in the future. But again, I think it goes back to the fact that we have a community that has needs and they have pain points. What are those things? I think we need to start by addressing what those things really are, breaking those things down, and then setting new goals and direction based on the feedback that we're getting. So I do believe it's going to take some work. It's a little bit out of the box in terms of where we probably have been, but I believe that in order to make that happen, and again, this is going back to looking at the master plan. This is going back to looking at that Vision 2030 and saying what was good, what was not so good, what do we have opportunity with, what do we need to change, what goals do we need to set, and how can we move forward together. First of all, we have the greatest advantage in the world in being diverse. I have neighbors that are Indian, Chinese, Egyptian, and on and on and on. And I don't think of them that way. I just think of them as my neighbors. They're people. And I walk around my neighborhood every day and I engage people. I talk to people. I ask them how it's going and they talk to me. And I think that's the number one thing that I see happening that's very important, facilitating the conversation. As I mentioned earlier, I was part of a Business Networking International. We had 42 members, and it's a very diverse set of members. They have from all kinds of backgrounds. We have people from Asia, we have people from Africa, we have people from southern states. So it's a great place to learn, and it's a great place to see the perspectives that people have and working together on how we can bring things into being. I just really believe an opportunity is there for us. I believe the solutions are there for us. And we just have to think beyond our own prejudices, our own preconceptions, and start to listen. And the more that we listen, and there's something that my wife tells me every day, are you listening to understand? Or are you listening to respond? And with the diversity that we've got, we need to listen to understand. I actually sat down and read this policy. And, as a policy goes, it's a nice policy. But the last few years, I've actually engaged with this policy. What do I mean by that? I actually have a personal relationship that I've developed with the wildlife species. in the last 2 years. And you're going to laugh when you hear me say that. But 2 years ago, at the start of this 24th month period that we've been in, I went down to North Creek Lake, and my wife and I noticed that the herons were mating down there. And I started taking photographs. And I've taken over 1,000 photographs of the herons mating at North Village. And I've got some amazing photographs. But you know what's really interesting about them? Is they act in a very human way. And if I had one thing that I could shout out to the village right now, and that would be take a day, walk around the lakes, take pictures, post it on social media. I think we would have the most amazing set of pictures of the wildlife that we have around here. The engagement would be terrific, and your relationship with the nature, the species, would change overnight. I'm a very optimistic person in general. I tend to look at things from a glass half full. So I look at things positively. As I mentioned earlier, we are at a crossroads, however. So we have a number of things that we have to take a look at. And a lot of that has to do with the changes that's gone on in the last 24 months. People's lifestyles have changed. Now, the village is now almost 56 years old from its conception. And the original master plan, I think, has great intentions. And and I'm going to say this: as far as this future of this village goes, it has limitless possibilities. I'm just going to say that up front. But we have things we've got to tackle. And the reason I think that we have limitless possibilities is, number one, we have the parks and recreation that no other community has. We have the facilities that no other community has. We have pathways. We've got businesses. We've got a lot of things going for us. At the same time, it's changing. The world is changing. I remember when we used to have Sir Walter Raleigh as a great place to gather. I remember a lot of the places that people used to be able to go, and we don't have some of those places to connect people. So in terms of the future, I think I would direct my questions and my intent on how do we build a community of connection? That's what a true hometown is, connecting. Right now, I'd say we're disconnected. It's not anybody's fault necessarily, because we've been thrown into this period. And yet now we have the opportunity to look at that ability to connect and say, what does that mean? How do we do it going forward? And how do we take in the interests of everybody to make them feel part of it? As an ancillary part of that answer, I think the communications that we have right now can be greatly enhanced. I know we've had limited resources for communications, but I think it'd be important to look at our media outreach, our ways that we communicate and reach people, so that they understand what we're about, what we're trying to do, and they all feel that they can participate in it. I'll just share a few other things from my personal background, just so that you're aware of my experience. I have worked in federal and state contracting positions. My business has been a GSA contractor for a number of years, so I understand that. I've worked with nonprofits and associations all my career, so I understand the nature of nonprofits and I understand how they operate. And in addition to that, I've been named a lifetime member of the American Marketing Association for the volunteer service that I gave to them years ago when I was involved in that program. And I've also been honored by the Smithsonian Institution for special recognition on service that I provided to one of their museums. So my heart is always to serve, and it's not an easy thing to do. But that is my desire, that is my intent, that's my goal, is to listen to the people in Montgomery Village and to serve them in any way that I can.